Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for Thursday, May 9th, 2019, the 10th year of Chungi, 4th month, and 5th day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Elder sitting in this morning for the second King of Chungu, Gyeongjin Moon. Let's go right to the weather. It's 51 degrees right now in the Cheonggyeong Palace. It may get a little bit cooler before we see the sunrise about an hour from now, and we're expected to get up to 58 degrees today. 58 is going to be rather cool. It's going to be that's about 10 degrees cooler than it is on average this time of year. So it'll be cloudy today, and during the day we have about 25% chance of a rain, so we'll have to see if there's actually any rain or not. But anyway, just a 1% chance of thunderstorms, and the winds will be out of the east-southeast at 7 miles an hour, gusting to 9. The chance of rain increases considerably tonight, 56%, but going down to only 51 degrees, which is rather mild for the evening. And occasional rain and drizzle, it says, with the southeast winds 5 miles an hour, gusting to 8 miles. As you can see, we're about, the daytime high is about 10 degrees lower than normal, but the nighttime low is about 8 degrees higher. Yeah, so sun's rising this morning at 5:47 and setting it to 8:05 p.m. this evening for 14 hours and 18 minutes of daylight as we draw now closer towards the summer solstice. I guess it's about 6 weeks or so now from summer solstice. All right, let's go to the Rhema for this morning, and I'm in the book of Colossians, Paul's letter to the Colossians, Paul's letter, and this is the very last section in the book, chapter 4, Colossians 4, reading from verse 16. This is the final sort of a salutation of Paul. And when this epistle is read among you, cause that it be read also in the church of the Laodiceans, and that ye likewise read the epistle from Laodicea. And say to Archippus, take heed to the ministry which thou hast received in the Lord, and thou fulfill it. The salutation by the hand of me, Paul. Remember my bonds, grace be with you. Amen, he says. In reading this verse, I'm inspired to make a couple of points about Paul. One is, of course, the king has been making the point, very valid point, about extreme Paulinism, where people have taken Paul's teachings to mean that we are saved by grace alone, and therefore, since we're saved once we're saved, we are always saved, and once we're saved, we can do anything we want. Any kind of debauchery is okay because the power of the cross is greater than the power of any kind of sin. This kind of ridiculous thing that they take from Paul. But the irony, shall we say, or it's an irony, but it's also a contradiction, is that Paul performed probably more works than any other person in the early church. Imagine, he went around pioneering churches, and he wrote to the churches that he had pioneered, and including the one in Colossus. And he, of course, opened up the gospel to the entire Gentile world, not just so it was no longer just for the Jews. So in the history of Christianity, not many people have performed as many works as Paul did. So to take his teachings and to say, okay, once we're saved and we can do whatever we want, is kind of ridiculous. Especially since when Paul heard about problems in the churches that he had pioneered, when he heard that there was when he heard that the heresy was creeping in, or when he heard that there was a fornication going on, and these kinds of things were happening in Corinth and in Ephesus and things like this. And then he wrote to them and said, hey, stop that. Don't do that. He didn't say, hey, don't worry, you're saved by grace. Once saved, you're always saved. So no sweat, don't sweat it. Go ahead and continue fornicating. He did not say that. He said the exact opposite. He said, stop that. And here also in this verse, he says that, first he says to read this epistle at your church, in the church of Colossus, and then also read the other one that I to the Laodiceans. I guess we don't have that today, but I guess someone lost it. And the one in Laodicea, read that one as well. And then to say to Archippus, I don't know who he is, but let's see, who is Archippus? It doesn't really say here, no. It says here in the notes, take heed to the ministry can be interpreted in one of two ways. One is a rebuke to Archippus for failing to finish the Christian service, his Christian service, or two, it may be Paul's way of informing the Colossian church of his approval of Archippus' ministry, and the church was to let him finish it. Okay, so we still don't know who Archippus was. But anyway, telling him to heed to the ministry, in other words, to do what it is that God has told you to do. Perform the works that God has told you to do. You know? So Paul obviously was very much about works as well. But people then have sort of taken his message to justify their own sin, I would say. God gave us creativity, and most of the time we use that creativity to think of ways to justify our own sin. I mean, that's the sad truth of humanity. And I think extreme Paulinism is another one of those ways in which we use people use the teachings of Paul to excuse their sin. Hey, yeah, I fornicated, but hey, no worry. Paul says that I'm saved, this kind of thing. But clearly, Paul does not support that. He did not support it in the churches that he pioneered. He did not support people who were fornicating. He did not say to them, don't worry, you are saved. And one verse that particularly catches my eye and that I've been thinking about recently a lot is Philippians chapter 1, verse 27, where Paul says to the church in Philippi, this is towards the beginning of his epistle to them, he says, only let your conversation be as it becometh the gospel of Christ. Let your conversation be as it becometh the gospel of Christ. Or in other translations, I think this is a King James, right? I believe that this is King, I'm not sure which version this is. But in other translations it says, make it appropriate to the gospel of Christ, in other translations. So anyway, watch what you say is what he's saying here. Watch what you say. He's not saying, hey, you're saved, so you can curse, you can talk about anything you want. No, he said, make sure that your conversation is appropriate to the gospel of Christ. That whether I come and see you or else be, still on Philippians 1:27 here, that whether I come and see you or else be absent, I may hear of your affairs, that ye stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, arriving together for the faith of the gospel. So he's saying, no, don't let me hear bad rumors about you. When people talk about you to me, when people report to you about me, make sure that they give me good reports. Don't let any smoke arise, because I'm going to assume that where there's smoke, there's going to be fire. So make sure there's no fire, so I don't see any smoke. Basically what he's saying here. So again, Paul is emphasizing the importance of works. Now the other point I wanted to make about Paul is that he was a very interesting man. A very interesting man. You know, he started out his career persecuting Christians, of course, and it was his job to catch and kill Christians or to persecute Christians. And then one day on the way to Damascus, where he was going to, in order for the purpose of persecuting the Christian community there, he met Jesus in the Spirit. You know, Jesus had already been crucified and dead and buried and resurrected. And Paul never met, as far as we know. Maybe he was in the crowd someplace, on the Sermon on the Mount or someplace like that, or with the fishes and loaves or someplace like that. Maybe he was in the crowd, we don't know. But as far as we know, he never met Jesus when Jesus was in his physical body. But then one day he was going to Damascus, and he was riding there on his donkey, and Jesus appeared to him and said, "Why do you persecute me?" And so Jesus and Paul just was sort of struck kind of by lightning, and according to this story, he fell off of his donkey, and of course that was the moment of his conversion then. So sometimes, I see people in the Family Federation, or I see, when I go to these depositions that we're doing of a Family Federation leaders, I'm sitting there listening to them, and I'm wondering, when is this guy going to fall off his donkey? When is he going to fall off his donkey? But I realized that, Paul, of course, has had to set the conditions for that to happen. And I think an important condition is that Paul must have been leading a life of faith where he was not afraid to examine his faith. He was not just, and I think most people today, I think, do not lead a life of faith where they have the courage to examine their faith. And I think that is the problem. I'm coming to that conclusion right now. That why do people not fall off their donkey? Why can't people see what is happening around them? What is happening? These family federation leaders, especially that I see giving the depositions and spewing all sorts of nonsense. And I think people who came out of the family federation and to the king are people who have examined their faith and said, wait a second, this isn't what Father wanted. I knew Father, and this is not what he said, and this is not what he wanted. And so they got up and left the family federation. These are brave people who examined their faith and made a decision to leave. Whereas, if you just keep on going on the old momentum, whether it was, I joined the church when I was, one person recently said, I joined the church when I was 12 years old. I guess he started going, I guess his parents started taking him into church and put him in the Sunday school there, or maybe without his parents, I don't know, but he claims that he joined the church where he was asked when he met Reverend Moon, he said, well, I met Reverend Moon when I was 12 years old. Well, you're not with Reverend Moon now, I'll tell you that. He's the family federation leader. And so, if he's been going this way for, 40, 50 years, he just sort of keeps on going out of momentum without really paying attention to where things are going. And other people, maybe their parents taught them, and so just, okay, well, it was good enough for my parents, it's good enough for me. Especially, I think people in the Catholic Church are that way. Sort of, my parents, it was good. I was raised this way, and I want to be this way. Recently, this morning, actually, I got news that a certain person passed away, and a person had a kind of a loose connection with sanctuary, I guess, off and on. And as she was passing, she asked that her last rites be performed according to the tradition of the Catholic Church. Not paying attention, I'll tell you that. Not paying attention. This person is not paying attention. Anyway, so her husband is perhaps also was kind of going back and forth, but now perhaps as a result of this will become more strongly connected to sanctuary, I think. I hope so, I pray so. People are not paying attention. They're just going according to momentum and not examining their faith. But what is more important in our life than our faith? Think about it. What is more important in our life than our faith? More than anything, we need to be examining our faith on a daily basis to make sure that we are growing closer to Christ. What is more important than salvation? Because we are all going to that eternal world. There is no exception. The leading cause of death is birth. 100% of people who are born eventually die. So we need to make sure that during this time that we are in our physical bodies, that we set the course right, because that's what the physical body is for. The physical body is there so that the spirit self can grow to maturity, grow to completion. I prefer completion over perfection. Some of you may prefer perfection, but anyway, the Korean word is wansung, which can be interpreted in either way. But I think a completion is the better way. Anyway, so Paul did a lot of that, and he performed more works than any other person in the early church, I would say. despite his difficulties with Peter, perhaps, and with James, but at least we have a lot more record of his works than anyone else. Perhaps because he was writing more than anyone else. But my message this morning is to underscore the importance of the King's message about the dangers of extreme Paulinism, and the importance of examining our faith to make sure that on a daily basis we are growing closer to Christ, and that if he makes a left turn, go left. If he makes a right turn, go right. And if he keeps going straight, go straight. But on a daily basis, we need to keep watching where Christ is going and where True Father is going, so that we do not lose sight of him, so that we do not grow distant from him, because that is where our salvation lies. Praise God. Thank you, Father, for these words this morning. Yeah, and Archippus, I hope he did his ministry. I don't know who he is or what he was supposed to do, but maybe he didn't. I don't know, because his name does not appear very often in history. That's the first time I've heard of him. That's the only place that I hear of him. Maybe in spirit world he's saying that, oh man, I should have done that. I don't know. Anyway, that's that. All right, now we have a interview that the king has prepared an interview, so let's go to that. This is of a Jewish rabbi. What is his name? What is his name? Rabbi Nachum Shafran. Okay, and he is an educator. He talks about education, and he also has some things to say about Islam. All right, so if that is cued now, let's go directly to the interview. Perhaps there's a break before that. Anyway, let's go.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, folks. Let's go straight to Scripture. We go to Revelation chapter 1 and verse 5 and 6. And Jesus Christ, the faithful witness and the first begotten of the dead, and the prince of the kings of the earth, has loved us and washed us from our sin with his own blood, and has made us kings and priests unto God and to his Father. Folks, that's what it's all about. Sovereignty comes from God. The fact that we are kings, the fact that we have the castle doctrine, the fact that we we're sovereign peoples, this doesn't come from a piece of paper or any government bureaucrat. It comes from Almighty God. So we are very blessed to be joined today with Rabbi Nachum Shafran, the surfingrabbi.com, Shaloha Foundation CEO, International Masters Ocean Championships Director. He was raised in San Francisco Valley and graduated from Reseda High School in 1969. He attended University of Hawaii from 69 to 72, UC Santa Barbara 81 through 86, and received his BA in Spanish, German language, and literature. A lifelong competitive athlete, he has 3 marathons under his belt, 4 triathlons, and was an LA County lifeguard for 10 years, meriting a medal for valor by the mayor for life-saving rescue on a drowning victim. Rabbi Shafran has been a lifelong educator, 25 years in the LA Unified School District, where he taught Spanish, ESL, and German. His controversial book, Kill Your Teacher, was a favorite expose of a culture of corruption and racism in our public schools, pointing out the dangers of multiculturalism in destroying our youth and examining the causes for jihadist propaganda in the classroom. Rabbi Shafran is an Army veteran, serving as a combat fitness instructor. At 64 years of age, he continues to work as a physical fitness trainer to groups and individuals. His world-acclaimed book, Surfing Rabbi, and on his website, surfingrabbi.com, details his fascination for the sport of big wave surfing, foreign travel, superior nutrition, and fitness. A father of 6, he decided to make a difference in 2009 and ran for California State Senate, not only just to talk about what's wrong, but he decided to take his message to the people of California, and in 2012 ran for U.S. Senate against Feinstein. Since his retirement from teaching, he has devoted his life to being a sentinel for the American people traveling the country, arousing them about the dangers of Sharia law and the creeping Islamicization of our nation, and how the American classroom is fodder for the radical Islamicist agenda. He is considered a leading Tea Party activist and has his base firmly in the conservative wing of the Republican Party. And of course, Jesse Lee Peterson, who was on the show maybe a couple months ago, states Rabbi Shafran is on a crusade to save America. Rabbi Shafran, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You bet.
Wow, my goodness, you've had an amazing life. Thank you for your service in the Army, and of course, let's get into some of your your hobbies and I would say your loves, I guess. You were a combat fitness instructor, and also have trained in all sorts of things, doing marathons and triathlons, and become a lifeguard, and then surfing. And so, what drew you to all these outdoor activities, all these kind of fitness activities?
It's funny. I talk about that in my book, and I'm a firm believer that our youth has got to be ignited by something that really turns them on, something that they wake up in the morning and they have a vision, they have some sort of a overall goal, a long-term goal that they see and they carry with them wherever they go. And to me, it was when I was 12 years old, I ran away from home, went to Malibu Beach. Once I saw those surfers there, I said, that's it. I found my place. And I'll tell you, to this day, by the way, there's a correction in my bio. I'm not 64, I'm 68. And
God bless you, sir. God bless you.
Thank you. God's been very, very gracious to me. I've enjoyed amazing health. But I will say I attribute it to the hard work and the discipline that I do in working out, obviously. You can't be a surfer that's serious unless you're in really good shape. And I carry that with me wherever I go. So in answer to your question, I just fell in love with surfing. It's just the most exciting thing. I mean, to me, after doing it for 55 years, you might think I'd slow down. I would slow down a little bit, maybe play a little bit more golf.
I know folks that have the surfing bug. Personally, when I was young, I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm a black belt now, and I train my young people. As you said, the youth really need to do training, and they need to do, we see it really as a spiritual practice. James said, faith without works is dead. And so like training is so important to become like a shepherd in the Christian, in our church. But anyways, the point is, when I was young, I was in California and training with Hicks and Gracie as a school and some of the Gracie brothers there for like a month or the summer or some of that. And man, these guys, like surfing is like real. It's like I met guys that surfing is like an addiction, and in a good way, because it's not drugs or some of that. It's they're in nature and it's beautiful. They took me surfing like one time. I did a nose dive because I skateboard. On the East Coast we skate, and I skateboarded. Right. It was totally different. I nose dived on this. Maybe what is it? Maybe I would say a 5-foot wave, probably some of that. I nose dived, tumbled, and then I was like under the water for like I felt like I was under the water like 2-3 minutes. I felt like I almost died.
Yeah,
it's scary, man. And then and then like you're sitting there in the waves, and like the shark. I feel like there's sharks under my feet.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole, it's like a obstacle course in surfing. But I will tell you this, it's funny, you mentioned training and discipline. In Hebrew, the word amen, which is a Hebrew word, is actually the word for training.
Nice, wow. You mean amen like the amen?
We see that the word amen that we say at the end of prayers to confirm what someone said, we validate them by saying amen. that word is also the same word that is used to train and to be physically fit and to be disciplined as such. And it's interesting. I think that young people, when I talk about it in my book, if we don't train them to say Amen, if we don't train them to stand at the Pledge of Allegiance, if we don't train them to sing God Bless America before school, we lose our youth. They need to be trained, and I'm sorry to use this word, they need to be inculcated, but in a good way, in order that they carry the torch after we're gone. Because the way it is now, I mean, up 30% of our youth, our young people, these millennials, they're totally fine with Venezuela. They've got no problem with that, and that's because they don't say Amen.
Oh my gosh! And you've been in the public schools, and I'm sure you saw the multiculturalism and the relativism that they're teaching, the sexual relativism, the ethical, moral relativism, the religious relativism. And tell us a little about that, your experience in the public schools.
Well, let me just give you a little example. How shall I call you? How shall I address you?
Oh no, I'm just Pastor Sean.
Okay, Pastor. I was told by my principal recently, I hooked up to a charter school, of which we have many here. Many of them are very subversive. Some of them actually do things. But the principal told me I cannot force the kids to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was astounded. I said, well, why should there be any coercion here? This is the first thing that we do when we start our day. We look at the flag. We have a second or two of silence. We put our hand on our heart. And we pledge allegiance to the flag. This is what every American person does. And she said, no, I just got a phone call from a parent that's going to sue the school if you continue.
Ooh, wow. Goodness. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't even wear an American flag T-shirt to school now because that's racist and it's not sensitive to other flags, is it?
Well, that's part of the, unfortunately, and Pastor, I tell you, I've seen this, I've witnessed it, and I'm watching the implosion of our republic by the communist, progressive fascists that have taken over our schools. And I say this, I'm a voice in the desert, and I talk to people, they don't get it. By the way, the people I talk to, there's nobody under 60 years of age. And this is also another crime, that we have not involved our nation in the battle against these leftist fascists. We seem to think that by watching Sean Hannity and having a beer and a little popcorn is going to somehow keep us free. That's not going to work.
No way, no sir, it will not work. But you know, it's amazing because I'm sure you definitely encountered directly. You talk a lot about how there's jihadist propaganda as well. I heard Bridget Gabriel, who is she's also somebody who fights against radical Islam. She was from Lebanon, I believe. And she was saying that in the public school manuals, like they were getting public school children to pretend that they're jihadis and the Crusaders are bad, even though the Crusades were a defensive war against the encroachment of Islam into Europe. And there was all this propaganda about how Islam is good and Christianity and Judaism is bad. Did you encounter any of this kind of stuff?
100%. It's palpable, and we got the prayer rugs here. We got the burqas for the girls. We've got Allahu Akbar. As a Jew, Pastor, I got to tell you, the Crusades was a mixed message. Along with getting rid of the Muslims, they did get rid of quite a few Jews, and this is unfortunate. And I know that good Christians out there rue this unfortunate aspect of the Crusades. But I'll tell you what we need right now is the Second Crusade, and that's the only thing I always say to Christian audiences. I don't ever speak to Jewish audiences because they're too liberal. So the only audiences I ever get are Christian audiences and patriots like yourself. I always say, unless we have another crusade like the one before, we're just not going to make it. we got a lot of guys storing ammunition, and we have all kinds of skids of, RPGs and grenades and, in our various hideouts throughout the United States. But it's going to come to a point where they're going to outlaw that too, or they're going to try to. And we need to be proactive. I feel that being a Jew, being a rabbi, is extremely important to give a voice to a coalition, as it were, of not a rainbow coalition, mind you, a patriotic coalition, where we have like-minded Americans, and it doesn't matter what we look like or how we pray, but we give our allegiance to that wonderful flag. We say, God bless America, my country 'tis of thee. We believe in those things, and we believe in God. In God we trust, and we need to reinforce this every single opportunity. And the youth of this country, especially, need to be able to say Amen without repercussions or without some sort of backlash, as we see now.
Well, it's amazing because the left is so radical nowadays, just coming out as communists, as socialists, promoting the virtues of Venezuela when people are eating out of the trash compactors and dump trucks, and that's all documented on film. And at the same time, they are coddling and protecting radical jihad and radical Islam, which is wreaking havoc over the world. I mean, just in the last year, there were hundreds and hundreds of jihadi attacks on churches and synagogues throughout the world. I mean, and this never gets covered in the liberal media. It's always something else about Trump or what he's tweeting. They don't think the Jews or the Christians that are getting massacred and murdered in different countries, because of their faith, because they don't accept the Sharia law, because they don't want that encroachment to come on in. It's unbelievable, and the left is protecting them and allying with them, and of course putting it in the schools. I heard that they're in the curriculum. They were also making the children recite the Shahada, which is like the main declaration of faith in Islam, of Muhammad, by the way, who had a 6-year-old bride and he was a pedophile. They were making the children recite that in the schools. I think it was in California. Did they ever force you to do those kind of things?
I personally was never compelled to do that, but I would ask your listeners, Pastor, to go on my YouTube channel. Go on YouTube, make a search for Rabbi Shifrin Charter School. That's Rabbi Shifrin Charter School. I made a video that's very compelling, very patriotic, and it explains exactly the kind of a charter school that I want to start, which will change America and turn this, this Titanic ship around. And in order for us to save ourselves, because, Trump can get elected one more time. And I'll tell you what, after that, we're going to have a lot of trouble. No one can take his place. He was given to us by God Almighty, to save this country. And by the way, I'm not a psycho fan of Trump. I believe in him. He's a good man. He's got a good heart. He cares for America. He's making some mistakes. And we see that this swamp, this deep swamp that's engulfed the entire country is there. It's alive. It's a growing mass. He's got to get rid of these guys, these communist infiltrators, and he's got to take care of it. Now, I always say, Pastor, that Joe McCarthy, Tail Gunner Joe, they put a bad rap on him, but this House Un-American Activities Committee that they set up in the legislature was extremely important and useful. We did have communist infiltration in Hollywood and elsewhere, and they rooted it out. And this is what we need to do today. I always say, let's reconvene the HUAC, House Un-American Activities Committee. Let's reconvene that. Let's find out who the communists are. And people can think whatever they want. We're not the thought police here. But when communism is anathema to our way of life. It's death for us.
Oh, yes. Remember in America, you used to say, kill commies, or, I'm going to kill commies in the different, in Vietnam and the different wars that we fought against the commies. I mean, it was seriously anathema to the state of existence, existential culture of America. Now you have, what is it, like 60% of young people, millennials, believe that socialism, communism is cool and it's okay?
Well, one of the problems too, Pastor, is that I talk about is this whole thing of diversity and multiculturalism. This is nothing less than the Trojan horse that the communists have set up, George Soros and other billionaires, to destroy our will to survive. You, for example, you may have heard in California recently, the legislature passed a bill saying you cannot suspend a student for defiant or wild behavior. Now think about that. One of the reasons why we have a attrition rate of teachers, the average attrition rate is about 7 years. Is what the average teacher lasts in the schools. Well, that's a shame because we spend billions of dollars training these teachers. But why does a teacher bail out of the profession, like I did at various parts of my career? Why would a teacher bail out of the classroom? It's not the money. If I wanted to do something for money, the first thing I wouldn't do would be a teacher. Rather, the teachers need to know that they've got their back covered by the administration, that any willfully, outrageous, either sexual or violent or defiant behavior that goes to the detriment of the class, that needs to be, that's an aberration that needs to be dealt with. And what we used to do is give students suspensions. 1 day, 2 day, get the parents involved. Get them out of work, call them up, and have them sit next to their little darling as the darling is yelling F you to the teacher. Maybe the parents can instill a little bit of, civility. But instead, it's been cut the teachers off at the knees. And they got rid of this. The only thing that saves us as teachers is the suspension. If you do this is going to be the consequence. And you'll have to think about it long and hard. Get your mother and father in here for a conference. I'll tell you, Pastor, nothing works better than calling that parent, getting them out of work. Because these parents need to work every single day just to make things happen in the state, because it's so expensive here. So you get the parent inside there for a parent-teacher conference, and let me tell you, that stems it in the bud. But unless we do that, we've got a classroom full of bullies and just wild kids. And this is one of the problems that we face. And of course, the people that passed that legislation knew this is all about the Black community. It's a little dirty secret. The Black community is beset by tremendous devils. Whether it's young girls that get pregnant out of wedlock, kids that are roaming the streets in gangs, kids that can't learn or won't learn, or they figure if you're a white teacher like myself, you're keeping the Black man down. I can't tell you how many times I was admonished by not only students, but administrators for not being quote unquote culturally sensitive. Can you imagine how my spine bristles when I hear that word?
Wow. Yeah, I mean it's so sad. And of course there's those issues, there's huge issues, like they're spending like $10,000 per child in LA public schools, and of course have one of the worst graduation rates in the country. They're like
let me correct you. It's not 10,000, it's $18,000 per school per kid. We
amazing.
That Bill, what's his name from Microsoft? What's his name?
Bill Gates,
the CEO. Yeah, right. He's a genius. He spent $500,000 giving these kids laptops. They stole them all or else broke them. We don't need any laptops. We don't need any technology. We don't need any hocus pocus in the classroom. We need God bless America, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. These kids can't read. They can't write. They can't fill out a job application. And they certainly can't compute. I went to these schools when I was a youngster in the 60s, Pastor. We were the gem of the nation. We were the top school district in the nation. Now we're floundering among the worst. And this is the fee that the communists have used over and over to take over the country that they're involved in. How could you elect a clown like Barack Obama, a numbnuts who couldn't tie his own shoes if it wasn't somehow subsidized through his Acorn organization or community activism? This is a guy who should be tarred and feathered and run out of town, but instead he was the leader of the free nation. I consider that itself an act of rebellion against the nation. His election, his very tenure in office was a slap in the face to every American that ever died anywhere in the world, defending his flag, defending his nation. This is a direct broadside to our individual liberties, our freedoms, and our sense of a people, a cohesion in our republic. And you can't elect a guy like Barack Obama unless you've destroyed the youth and taught them that white people are bad, Christians are bad, anybody that's a person of color is superior to a white person. And look at this. We've got professors now telling us that the white people are destroying the world.
Even though they're the most, it's the safest cultures in the world, and because they have the lowest crime rate, statistically speaking.
It's just, I always say to the Americans that I speak to, Pastor, wake up. Turn off the frickin' TV. Get rid of that idiot box. Start learning the Constitution. Start caring about your Second Amendment, your First Amendment. I got bounced out of Facebook many a time, and a lot of my friends are getting sanctioned by the social. I can tell you, unless Trump clamps down on the communists in the social media, and they're sanctioning free speech, or not sanctioning it rather. If we don't, he's not going to get elected unless we get a grip and have a truly free speech.
I mean, you know what they just did with, of course, Alex Jones, Laura Loomer, Paul Joseph Watson. They've now banned them almost completely. And if you say the name of Alex Jones and InfoWars on Facebook, apparently, you may be banned. I mean, that's how draconian in 1984, Kafkaesque we've become. It's just a dystopian nightmare. We're living through it, Rabbi. We're living in it.
Alex Jones, say what you want about him. I used to listen to him every day. He's got some amazing ideas. He's a patriot.
He is a patriot.
He cares about God. He cares about country. He cares about flag. He's a patriot through and through. A little hyperbole, Pastor, never hurt in the cause of freedom.
And because he's so, he's raw, and he does, get angry when, you're supposed to have righteous anger. I mean, the Bible talks about, even God getting angry when the people, stray from his commandments and go to, kill their children and fantasize with Baal worship, etc. He's just being real, and that allows for him to connect with a lot of people that feel the same pain, but they know how to express it. Alex is a real patriot through and through.
Absolutely. Well, they're weeding us out little by little. And like I always say in the schools, for example, if you're white, it's funny. If you look at the HR department in any school, there's not one white person in charge. Have you ever looked at that?
Right.
I'm not kidding. Don't listen to me. Choose any school. Find out who the HR person in charge is. You're not going to find a white Christian. It's not going to happen.
Right, and it was even the FBI directive that came out. I think it was declassified in 2010. But they were talking about the next group of what they want to deem as domestic terrorists are Christian white married males. So they had a clear target about who they. And I'm sorry, gun owners as well. That was gun owners was part of that. Christian gun owner, white male, and that was a demographic that they were going to target to destroy.
Now, Pastor, I want to stop you here, and I want you to give me a mazel tov. Because I'm Jewish, nobody can accuse me of being a terrorist, right?
My gosh, it's crazy. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I find that this is my one, what's the word I want to use? My one handicap that I'm given in this life. Nobody's going to have the moxie or the chutzpah to accuse me of being a white terrorist.
Well, that's a blessing. It's a blessing. But of course, the FBI was definitely, and under Obama especially, because and Hillary Clinton was promising that she was going to pledge to destroy the Second Amendment and get rid of it in the first year of office. Kamala Harris is now doing it in the first couple 100 days. She says she will remove and by executive order, take away the Second Amendment. I mean, these people are hardcore tyrants. They're seriously in the vein of Stalin, Hitler, Mao Zedong, etc. These people are serious predators and dangerous.
Well, we need to work together, Pastor, and I don't want this to be a one-shot deal. I want you and your listeners and your faithful flock to work with me, to help me so we can work together at different functions, different venues. And we need to get the word out. The Americans are a sleeping giant. They're just simply asleep. But I believe that once they're aroused, and I hope to God we don't have to have another 9/11 to arouse them. But I will tell you this. When that day comes and we have another 9/11, Pastor, remember that we spoke about it on your show. And it takes the Americans to wake up. It takes them a lot. And I don't see anything good on the horizon right now. The only thing we've got in our favor is Donald Trump. And he's the only guy. It's interesting. Let me teach you a little bit about Judaism. We used to have a Sanhedrin, as you know, a Supreme Court established in the Bible. And if you weren't rich, you couldn't be on the court. Now, a lot of people think, well, whoa, wait a minute. That sounds a little bit prejudicial. And the answer is no. A person that is wealthy will not take a bribe. That's the whole point. If you've got tons of cash, you're not going to be worried about the cash. You're going to wonder, what does the law say? And this is what we have in Donald Trump. He doesn't need the money. He's not in there for the money. I mean, my God, his entire family was targeted by these communist threats. I mean, he's got security on him 24/7, all over the place. He's got to carry a gun himself wherever he goes. So what we need to do is simply unite. Let these voices that people hear now, you and me and others, Alex Jones, we need to be on the same page, and we need to do something. I've always been motivated by John F. Kennedy, Pastor. I always wondered, when will the time come that I could implement his words, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I always wondered when I would be able to do that. And here I am, a veteran teacher, teaching American values. My parents did not come here on the Mayflower. My parents came here on a rickety boat, landed up in Ellis Island, immediately went to sweatshops in in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, worked 14, 15, 16 hours a day sewing rags, and their children became professionals. Have we experienced anti-Semitism? You're damn right. I get it every day. I get it every day from quote-unquote people of color that don't like the fact that I wear a yarmulke. They don't like the fact that I have a beard. They think that I just had a black girl tell me, well, the Jews are only here to suck the wealth out of the nation and it's to destroy us. And I said, you know what? That's what's called anti-Semitism, young lady. Go to the principal right now. You're out of my class. 5 minutes later, she's back, and the principal says, "Oh, she didn't really mean it." Really?
Oh.
So,
Wow, that's
yes,
too
there's
bad.
been anti-Semitism, but guess what? Look at the Jewish people in America, and look at them in the Soviet Union when Stalin was there. Who had a better deal?
Yeah, it's so crazy to treat a peoples as a monolithic one group when there's so much diversity of the beliefs. Like you said, there's so many secular Jews, there's Orthodox Jews, there's Kabbalistic Jews. It's so crazy. We have to judge the man of a character as character, individual character.
What I love about the diversity psychophants is there's diversity for everybody except white Christians. How about that?
Right. White Christians. And now Asians are the new whites.
Yeah, exactly. The Asians are no-nonsense people. The parents are, by and large, extremely conservative. They absolutely insist that their kids do their homework, that they get A's in school, and that's a problem for a lot of people. Okay, I know there's a lot of racial divisiveness and contentiousness in the Asian community, getting it from Black and Hispanics, for example. It's a very big problem. It's been swept under the rug. Nobody wants to talk about it. We've got a situation at UCLA when the Asian students that are getting 4.2, 4.3 GPA can't get into school. Now, why would that be? Affirmative action.
Yep.
There you go. Now, those affirmative action students are not prepared for college. They're simply not. The numbers tell us that 30% of them drop out the first year. And of those that are in, at least half of them have to have reading and tutorials. So in order to be able to read, in order to be able to cut the chase when it comes to their academic load in school. They just simply were not taught in high school, or they were just goofing around listening to the HR people tell them, "Oh, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to college." That's a bunch of baloney. They're not going anywhere because they're not qualified.
It's really interesting. Now it seems that the young people, there's now a growing wave of young people of all race, creeds, and colors that are now starting to lean conservative because they've been dealt the hand of the liberals for the last 50, 60 years. And all they brought is more, terrorism to their streets, more crime, more teenage pregnancy, more divorce, no fathers in the home. And this is every community that the liberals have ruled over. And now conservatism is now rising. I mean, in the Black community, Latino community, Asian community, they're trying to make them leftists, and many of them are. But now they're trying to, as you said, they're fundamentally conservative in terms of some moral issues. But there is a rising trend of conservatism throughout the Americas, the United States. That is kind of the undercurrent that's rising because people now have internet. They're not watching CNN, MSNBC. They're watching what they want to watch and searching and doing their own research. And that's why it's so important to keep the internet free, isn't it?
Pastor, 100%. But what people don't realize, well, they go to work for 1, 2, 3 jobs to keep bread on their table. The schools are up to their mischief behind the backs of the parents. The parents have no clue. Once they drop those kids off, they don't know what's going on because they're too busy. Again, we've kept our eye off the ball. We've allowed the communists to take over our schools. And even God-fearing parents can be taking their kids to schools where they're teaching them about Sharia and about Muhammad and all that sort of nonsense. And it's just, I find it absolutely ironic that people work so hard for the American dream and they want their freedom, they want their Second Amendment rights and their First Amendment rights on the one hand, and on the other hand, their kids are being taught how those precious freedoms that we have are from old white men.
Oh my gosh! And they really, they're basically teaching that families are bad, dads are bad, parents are bad. Change your gender at any whim of your emotion. I mean, it's total insanity, Rabbi. But it requires patriots like yourself to stand up and talk. I know you got to go running. What is the website that people can come on, visit, and support your work at?
Well, Pastor, again, I'm going to call to you and to your God-fearing friends and your patriotic American audience to please, let's work together. I'm available. People can call me. They've got my cell phone. They've got my email address. You can look up my videos on YouTube. My videos are no nonsense. They're arousing people. They're bordering on heresy, of course, for the leftists, which is a problem for me. My latest video, where you can see Rabbi Schifrin confronts Laodicea. Your audience can go to that. Again, it's on YouTube. Search Rabbi Schifrin confronts Laodicea, and I have a whole video explaining to Americans how Laodicea is a communist front that hates Americans, hates white people, and is working harder than a little beaver to subvert our country. And they claim that the southwest of the United States is theirs in terms of being a Mexican. And I say, well, gosh, if I were in charge of Mexico and I had a bunch of gringos coming in and saying that Tijuana and Nuevo León and Monterrey and all those other places, that's part of America, the first thing I'd do is kick them right out of Mexico. And that's exactly what we should do. But instead, we pander to these people, we accommodate them, and then sooner or later, they end up teaching our kids. And this is something that I'm very keen about, and I'm very aware of. And this is something that that the whole racial thing is it's a very big thorn for me. I tackle it, and I tell people that this is exactly how the communists are destroying our country, by dividing us racially and telling us that white people are bad. George Washington was a slave owner. Well, the slaves came here from blacks themselves. They were the black people themselves sold other blacks into slavery. You don't get millions of people to become slaves without a few interlopers, in the black community to come in and work in the slave trade.
Yeah, and only 1/3 of the founding fathers were slave owners, and within a lifetime they had freed their slaves. So it's like they had practiced the Christian ethic because they felt this country has to be free, including the slaves. So by the time they had ended their lives, they had all set them free, and so they were not for slavery. They came here from the British culture, which had slaves, and then of course set them free during the lifetime and or after the lifetime. So they were a different breed of peoples, and of course they made the most prosperous, most free country in the world. So it is very sad that it's been taken over by the communists, but there are people that are still standing up, and it's required at this time and hour that all the good patriots stand together.
Pastor, I'm still waiting for the first gangbanger or MS-13 murderer to want to go back to Uganda or Mexico or El Salvador. They don't want to go back there. They want to stay here because it's a great deal living here. And the truth is that people will cross rivers. They'll go through crocodiles. They'll go through sharks. Anything to get the hell out of the place where they're coming from. I mean, half the people in El Salvador live here. Okay, why is that? If this is such a terrible place and we're worried about white privilege, why would they come here? Answer, because this is a beautiful country. But it is becoming destroyed, and we are going to lose our freedoms unless we wake up. And this is my message to America.
Rabbi Schifrin, that is the final word. Thank you so much for joining us today. And stay strong, my friends. Stay strong. There are good folks out there like yourself. And even though California is the way it is, there's always Florida, and there's some surfing there too. All right, folks.
Well, Pastor, if you'd be so kind to post my email address there for your listeners and your flock, and
yes,
please let them know that I'm with them, and they can always email me. And if anybody wants to invite me to their church or to their organization to speak, this is what I'm doing.
We will, Rabbi. Thank you so much for joining us today. Folks, we'll be right back after the short break. Stay with us on the King's Report.
And we're back. King's Report for May 9th, Thursday, 10th year of Chungi, the 4th month and the 5th day by the heavenly calendar. And I wanted to follow up on this points made by the rabbi with a couple of stories that are current. He talked about how the leftists and Islam are taking over America as a public school system. And here we see that in Seattle School District urges teachers to follow CARE. CARE is the Council on American Islamic Relations, which was formed after 9/11. Followed CARE guidelines on blessing Muslim students during Ramadan. Ramadan began earlier this week, I think, just 3 days ago, I think. And the Islamic world is in the month of Ramadan right now. And so CARE is saying that in the United States as well, in schools, teachers should bless their Muslim students. We cannot say Merry Christmas, don't do that, but let's see what they have to do with the Muslim students. A Durham School District in Seattle, Washington is calling on its teachers to follow CARE-issued guidelines regarding adherence to Islam. The school district is urging its teachers to bless Muslim students by reciting Arabic to them during Ramadan. The Council on American Islamic Relations issued an informative letter on upcoming Islamic holidays and religious accommodations, pressing school district officials to have their teachers recite Ramadan Mubarak or Ramadan Kareem when welcoming Muslim students during Ramadan, according to the religious liberty advocacy group Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund. The letter also instructs teachers to monitor Muslim students' Ramadan fasting, as well as to refrain from scheduling tests during the Islamic holidays, Eid al-Fitr and Eid, adds the FCDF. One school district has reportedly reacted to the letter by urging its teachers to follow the CARE guidelines. FCDF says that during her school district, Superintendent Judy Martinson enacted the CARE letter as official district policy by distributing the guidelines to principals, who then distributed it to all teachers and staff. By urging teachers to bless Muslim students in Arabic, the district is running roughshod over the First Amendment's mandate of government neutrality toward religion, said FCDF Executive Director Daniela Piedra. A school district would never order teachers to welcome Catholic students during Easter with "He is risen, Alleluia," said Piedra. Singling out Muslim students for special treatment is blatantly unconstitutional. FCDF sent a legal memo to Martinson on Monday, warning the superintendent that the school district is likely violating the United States Constitution by favoring Muslim students, and that the advocacy group may take legal action if the district does not rescind Ramadan policy within a reasonable time. To be clear, nothing in the Constitution prohibits public schools from accommodating students' religious exercise to the extent that it would not interfere with educational interest, states the memo. But the religious liberty protected by the Constitution is abridged when the state affirmatively sponsors religious practice. Here, by issuing if you can't pray in school, if you can't say Merry Christmas in school, if you cannot say Happy Easter in school, then how is it that they're able to say this other stuff for the Muslim students? Here, by issuing the CARE letter to district employees, you acted under color of state law to create an official policy that has a primary effect of advancing religion, as the advocacy group. The Ramadan policy in both adoption and implementation plainly imposes liability on the district under the United States and Washington constitutions. The letter also warns Martinsons about CARE's anti-Semitic advocacy, as well as its ties to Islamist supremacists. All right, so it goes on. So CARE must not be allowed to indoctrinate impressionable school children under the guise of diversity and cultural awareness, states the advocacy group. Yeah, so when they do it for Muslims, it's cultural awareness. When they do it for Christians, it's the wall between church and state is abridged, this kind of a thing. So that's one thing that's going on. Another thing that's going on here on Fox News is that California okays new sex ed guidelines for teachers despite objections from parents and protesters. Here we have the protesters, Christian protesters out there. This is a new sex education policy that the California Department of Education has approved. It encourages classroom discussions about gender identity and LGBT relationships, but removed 5 resources and books, including one that explains sex to students as young as kindergarten. So those were removed, all right? But I'm sure they'll try that next time. LGBT advocates praise the new recommendations for giving attention to a community that is often left out of sex education policies, but some parents and conservative groups assailed the more than 700-page document as an assault on parents' rights, claiming it exposes children to ideas about sexuality and gender that should be taught at home. Remember, we had that story coming out of Birmingham, England, where in a public school they started talking about homosexuals and teaching about homosexuals, and you had parents outside demonstrating. Well, the parents outside demonstrating were all Muslim. My child, my choice, or something like that. They were saying, yeah. So it's good to see that finally Christians are standing up as well. We'll have to see what effect this will. Maybe not. I don't know. If these people were Muslim, the California Department of Education would be much more likely to listen to them. All right, but Christians just ignore them. That's what happens in most cases. That's the reality that we're facing today. Okay, so yes, the Department of Education is pushing back. Our priority is to make all children feel comfortable at school. Well, are Christian children going to feel comfortable at school? Well, I don't care about the Christian children as long as the Muslims feel comfortable at school. That all children means the ones that agree with us. All right, just like in communist countries, the people is defined, the word people is defined as people who support communism. Anybody who is against that is enemy of the people. All right, so it's the same thing here, that all children means non-Christian children, okay? So Christian children can just go cry someplace. All right, let's check out what President Trump is doing. As the rabbi was pointing out, he is our hope right now. We're concerned about what's going to happen after he leaves office 6 years from now, but he is definitely our hope. Last night he was in Florida, and he was talking about how foreign leaders want Biden to win so they can rip off America. Yeah, Biden has been saying that, foreign leaders are calling me and asking me, begging me to run for president so that we can get rid of Trump. And Trump was saying, well, yeah, foreign leaders, I'll bet they do, because I've been hard on them. I've been putting American interests first, and they don't like that. They want to go back to Clinton, Biden, Bush, where foreign interests were first. So he's using that to his advantage. President Donald Trump on Wednesday evening mocked former Vice President Joe Biden, saying that foreign leaders presumably want him to win the 2020 presidential election so they can rip off America. At a Panama City Beach, Florida campaign rally, Trump, referring to the candidate he has dubbed Sleepy Joe, said that he heard a sleepy person running for president bragging about all the foreign leaders who want him to be president. America's winning again, and America's being respected again, Trump told the raucous crowd. In fact, one of the Democrats today said that a sleepy person, said that he heard from a lot of foreign leaders and they want him to be president. Trump continued, of course they do, so they could continue to rip off the United States. Of course, I think if I heard that, I'd never vote for him. And Biden recently boasted that unnamed world leaders were calling him and begging him to run for president. Well, let's see, who would be calling him and begging him to run for president? Xi Jinping. Let's see, the leader of the British Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, probably. Macron, definitely. Merkel, definitely. Who else? Those are probably the major ones that have been calling for Biden to run. Yes, not Abe. I'm sure not Abe, the Japanese prime minister. He is maintaining a very close relationship with President Trump because he knows that a strong America is necessary for Japan and necessary to stop the advance of China and stop the advance of North Korea as well. So anyway, Biden says that I get calls from people all over the world. World leaders are calling me, and they're almost begging me to do this, to save the country, save the world, Biden recently said. Okay, so yeah, all right. Well, like Trump said, once we know that, then we don't want to be voting for him, do we? Speaking of China, here we go. Yeah. The trade deal with China looks like it's in big danger here. Trump is saying that they went back on all the things that they had agreed on previously, but China is now rejecting those accusations. Remember, the deadline is tonight, 12:01 a.m. Friday morning, which is tonight. And if the deal is not agreed to before then Trump says that he's going to raise the tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods from 10% to 25%, putting further pressure on China. China rejected U.S. accusations of backtracking in trade talks, and warned it would not capitulate to any pressure as the two sides head into make-or-break negotiations on Thursday. That's today. After months of seemingly collegial talks, China Trade Envoy Liu He returned to the bargaining table in the U.S. Capitol under a tense atmosphere after U.S. negotiators accused Beijing of reneging on previously agreed commitments. Well, at least he's here. At one point, they were saying, hey, we don't think we're going to go. We don't even want to go to the talks. But they've already blinked by coming here. So let's see what happens today. It's better if they will blink again, if they will step down. But I'm really glad that President Trump is holding the line, and is not going to compromise. I hope he's not going to compromise anyway. Let's see what happens today. We'll be reporting on this tomorrow morning. Okay. And then Beijing says that if Trump does that, if he raises tariffs, then they're going to hit back with necessary countermeasures. But, it's going to hurt them a lot more than it hurts us. We've already seen that their stock market has fallen more as a result of this than the U.S. stock market, because the U.S. is, let's face it, is much, much stronger than China. We can take a hit. We'll in the short term, it may be a little bit difficult for us. Here we see the Dow, the stock futures here are down right now. U.S. futures point to a lower open as trade tensions continue. And the Dow is below 26,000 now, and the S&P below 2,900 now, and the NASDAQ is below 7,600. So here. And Trump is saying that China broke the deal in trade talks. They can't do that. So they'll be paying, Trump told a crowd in a rally in Florida last night. Okay. All right. So we'll see what happens there. We'll be reporting on that tomorrow morning, the results of that. We might as well go to this now. This is a feature story in The Guardian this morning about the Winhoff and his Winhoff method. They have a story here, and much of it we already know. The king has already reported to us, but if you're interested, you can check this out. The link is on the drudgereport.com, and they're saying that in the UK, in Britain, the cold water swimming has enjoyed a huge surge in popularity in recent years, with the Outdoor Swimming Society growing from 300 followers in 2006 to 27,000 members this year. Yeah. And anyway, this author went with him, and the temperature was 7 degrees C. 7 degrees C would be, 5 degrees C is 41. So 7 degrees C is 2 degrees above that. About 3.6 above 41 is 44, 45, I guess 45 degrees. So anyway, they have this long feature article there with some photographs here of people there was some people immersed in ice there. This guy, not sure what he's doing. But anyway, they're doing their breathing method here. Here we go. They put ice in the water, I guess. Ice cubes in the water to make it colder, like that. All right, and here, some ladies doing some stuff there. All right, so that's a thing there. All right, yesterday we reported on the New York Times article. I'm sorry, was it yesterday? Yesterday was Wednesday. Tuesday, actually, on the New York Times article about Trump's tax returns, or actually not the tax returns, but information from the tax returns 30 years ago. And Breitbart is pointing out this morning that actually Donald Trump already revealed this himself 15 years ago during the during the TV show Apprentice, where he said, it wasn't always so easy about 13 years ago, which would have been, this is 15 years ago, and so 13 years ago he's saying, so that would be 28 years. So he was referring to the same period that the New York Times thinks that they have a bombshell scoop on. He said, I was seriously in trouble. I was billions of dollars in debt, but I fought back and I won big league. So he already talked about that previously. So the New York Times story is not that big of thing as they are advertising. All right. On the Second Amendment front, Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, is expanding Brazilian gun rights with an executive order. He kept one of his campaign promises on Tuesday by signing an executive order to relax his country's 2003 firearms law. Among other measures, the order will make it easier for Brazilians to import guns and buy large amounts of ammunition. Rural gun owners will be allowed to use their weapons anywhere on their own property, while sport shooters and hunters will be permitted to transport firearms from home to their shooting clubs or hunting grounds. It is an individual right of the one who may want to have a firearm or seek the possession of a firearm, Bolsonaro said when signing the order. Public security starts inside your home, he said. The Associated Press reports Bolsonaro was surrounded by supporting lawmakers who applauded and made finger gun gestures with their hands at the signing ceremony, an image that would likely cause fits among gun control enthusiasts in the United States. Gun ownership in Brazil still has a number of requirements, but Bolsonaro relaxed one of them early in his presidency by rescinding the requirement to submit formal justification for owning a gun to the federal police. Supporters say the moves will help Brazilians defend themselves amid rising crime rates. Brazil's murder rate is 3 times higher than the level considered by the United Nations to be endemic violence, Deutsche Welle reported. Bolsonaro, a former paratrooper, promised to enhance the ability of citizens to defend themselves against crime during his campaign. He spoke often of relaxing or repealing the 2003 firearms law, which made civilian ownership of guns all but impossible. Criminals and paramilitary organizations in Brazil have very little trouble arming themselves with smuggled weapons. See that? See that? See that? See that? Civilian ownership of guns, all but impossible. But criminals and paramilitary organizations have very little trouble arming themselves with smuggled weapons. Yeah. Yesterday we had there's a story about, I think it's in New Jersey, or New York or New Jersey, where someone was killed. It was in New Jersey, that's right. It was a baseball player, a minor league baseball player in New Jersey was killed. He was shot to death in New Jersey, all right? In New Jersey, where the gun laws are very strict. Drug gangs consider themselves a more effective fighting force than the Brazilian army and attack almost at will, committing murders and destroying vital infrastructure. Entire cities have been shut down by the chaos. In March, a drug gang opened fire on a passing military convoy that happened to be carrying uranium for a nuclear power plant. Brazilian gun maker Taurus Armas S.A. reported a 21% surge in its stock price on Wednesday after the decree was signed, which might seem counterintuitive because Bolsonaro explicitly wants to open up gun imports and break up the monopoly Taurus currently enjoys. Company CEO Salicio Naz said he hoped Bolsonaro's administration will really bring growth for our country. Yeah. Well, Biden is saying that, let's see, can we get that Biden story? He's saying that we need to deal with the Second Amendment rationally, all right? And you know what the rationally means to them, right? Second Amendment. He says that, here we go. There's a rational way to deal with the Second Amendment, he says. Well, let's see what it means by rational, all right? All right, well, let's see what he means. Let's see what he means. Let's give him a chance. Former Vice President Joe Biden said there was a rational way to deal with the Second Amendment during a campaign address in Nevada Tuesday. Biden recounted the massacre of Las Vegas and Newton, Connecticut, that have prompted calls in the Democratic Party for stricter gun controls. He said it's hard to be in Nevada and not think of the Las Vegas shooting, in which more people died and were injured than in any other shooting in American history. All the lives that were lost, all the families that were changed, created by senseless gun violence, he said. There are moments you never forget. I just want to say to you that we don't have to have, there's a Second Amendment, but there's a rational way to deal with the Second Amendment. Okay, let's see what it is. Biden quickly established as the only front runner in the crowd. He supported the assault weapons ban in the 1990s and said in 2016 that opposition to gun control borders on irrational. So there, opposition to gun control borders on irrational. But it does not border on irrational. Yeah? Christchurch, New Zealand. It was already very difficult to get guns there. And now it's even more difficult. But also in New Jersey and England, from time to time, we hear of shootings in London when it's supposedly impossible to have a gun there. So his rational approach to the Second Amendment, he says that opposition to gun control is irrational. So we can see what he's up to there. All right, let's take a short 2-minute break now, and we'll come back with more news from a Chinese perspective.
At the range today, I just learned a new technique from the father of the 44 Magnum, Elmer Keith, which is called shooting out of the notch, which allows you to make really long distance shots and still have an extremely precise sight picture. So I brought my CW9 car down, and with this little gun, we're gonna shoot this little munchkin at 200 yards up in the hills, applying this technique, and hopefully we'll make the shot. To apply this technique, instead of using the blade of the front sight lined up with the top of the rear sight, I'm going to take the dot of the front sight and raise it up so that it's out of the notch, but I'm still going to keep the front sight on my target. Bringing that front sight up like that is going to compensate for the bullet drop over that excessively long distance with just this little gun. So if applied right, we should be making contact. Let's see how it goes. I saw this shot, so I'm a little bit out of breath because you gotta run to make sure that is what I thought it was, and it was. So while making this shot, from that distance with these white dot sights, it literally would cover the entire target. You couldn't see what you were shooting. So using the Elmer Keith technique, you were able to raise it out of the back notch. I can't breathe. Out of the back notch, allowing you to keep your accuracy, aim, and also still see the target, which is key because it was a hard shot, not gonna lie. But yeah, it went great, and Elmer knows what he's talking about. And for such a small gun to be able to take that hit, I'm very impressed with this. All right, guys, be sure to like and share, and I'll see you out on the range. That was awesome. Hey, can I try that one? Yeah, let's do it with the 380. Does everybody have eyes and ears?
And welcome back to the King's Report for Thursday, May 9th, 2019, 10th year of Chungi, the 4th month and 5th day by the heavenly calendar. Yeah, North Korea is at it again. It has fired another missile, or at least one projectile or something, into the ocean, the second time in 5 days. North Korea welcomed a U.S. envoy's visit to Seoul by firing at least one projectile for the second time in a week, Thursday, the South's military said, as Pyongyang seeks to up the ante in deadlocked nuclear negotiations with Washington. So Trump is facing China right now, today, and there's a connection there, China and North Korea. They're both trying to test Trump to see whether they can up the pressure enough for Trump to bend to their will. Those talks with China today, I think, are pretty crucial because China will also influence North Korea. Trump really needs to show that he can take anything that China throws at them or North Korea throws at them as well. Otherwise, if Trump feels forced to compromise, then things will get pretty bad. I think in the midterm. By midterm, I mean next 2, 3, 4 years. Let's see. The launch came after North Korea carried out a military drill and fired multiple projectiles on Saturday, with at least one believed to be a short-range missile. It was also hours after the U.S. Special Representative on North Korea, Stephen Biegun, arrived in Seoul late Wednesday for talks with South Korean officials on the Allies' approach towards Pyongyang. It's Biegun's first visit to Seoul since the Hanoi summit between Trump and Kim Jong-un collapsed without agreement or rolling back Pyongyang's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. We are still analyzing whether it's a single or multiple projectiles, Joint Chiefs of Staff spokesman Kim Jun-rak told AFP. I guess that would be the South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff, adding the launch fired in an eastward direction appeared to originate from Shinori in North Pyongan province. North Pyongan province is actually on the western side of the peninsula, that's the one that borders China, on the western side of the peninsula. So I guess it means that it was fired in an easterly direction from there. The decades-old Shinori operational missile base, 45 miles northwest of Pyongyang, is one of North Korea's longest-running missile facilities and houses a regiment-sized unit equipped with Nodong-1 medium-range ballistic missiles, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Anything fired from it in an easterly direction would have to cross the Korean peninsula before reaching the sea. Biegun met his South Korean counterpart, Lee Do-hun, for breakfast on Thursday, but much of his schedule was not made public. The U.S. envoy is due to meet South's foreign and unification ministers Friday as the security allies work on their approach towards Pyongyang. And the U.S. still has 28,500 troops in the south. That's a lot less than it used to be. And when I was covering South Korea in the 80s, it was a 42 or 43 or something, 43,000, 41, I can't remember, but it began with a 4, I remember that. With Thursday's launch, said Hong Min, a senior researcher at the state-run Korea Institute for National Unification, North Korea is sending a clear message that it will not be satisfied with humanitarian aid being considered by Seoul. Yeah, so they're trying to. This is what North Korea does. Whenever they get hungry, they start firing missiles, so as to get more money out of the U.S. And they got a lot of money out of Clinton for sure. They got billions of dollars of money out of Clinton, Bill Clinton. But this is one of the things that they use their missiles for. I mean, one missile may cost a few $100,000, but they can get more than that out of their firing. But this has got to stop. This kind of a ridiculousness. We want security guarantees in return for the denuclearization process, he added. But what security guarantees can we give them? Answer is none, because the only security guarantee that they consider to be truly a guarantee is that they have nuclear weapons. They're not going to give up. All right. I mean, this should be common sense among everyone involved by now. Kim could have felt he needed to show a strong military posture to ease complaints following a joint South-U.S. military drill last month, so forth and so on. But the only way North Korea is going to give up their nuclear weapons if there is regime change. Yep. That's the only way. That's the only way. Yeah. So let's look at some of the other stuff that's on Drudge this morning. Human lifespan could soon pass 100 years. Well, you know what that means. Well, Social Security is going to go broke. If we could, if I continue to collect Social Security for the next, 30 plus years, and people in my generation do the same, definitely Social Security and Medicare are going to go broke. There's no way, especially since young kids are not having babies to grow up and start paying more into the system. So that's a bygone. That's a foregone conclusion. Genetically modified bacteria killing viruses used on patient for the first time. Okay. Well, if it's the bacteria that is genetically modified, that's okay. But if the people start getting genetically modified, then that's not okay. And that once you start modifying people, then those people are no longer people under the Chunyu Constitution. A Republican Senate Intelligence Committee subpoenas Donald Trump Jr. Okay. They're going after the president's family now. Denver decriminalizes psychedelic mushrooms. Well, I think there was already complaints about the decriminalization of marijuana and how it's increased the traffic accidents and crime and so forth, but I guess that's not enough. They want to decriminalize psychedelic mushrooms as well. Nearly 1 in 2 Americans takes prescription drugs, deep brain stimulation to treat opioid addiction. Yeah, the opioid addiction is really serious. Average person mired in boredom 131 days a year. The only way is down, subterranean survival warning. Well, Father talked not about subterranean, but subterranean means down into the earth. Father talked about living in the ocean, on the ocean, in the ocean. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, Bernie Sanders, his campaign staff has unionized, becomes the first unionized presidential campaign in history, and so forth. Howard Schultz on pause. He's the former CEO of Starbucks, and he has said that he wants to run as a moderate Democrat, run for president, but looks like that he may be on pause. Oh, okay. A world-famous chef interrogated at LAX over duffel full of piranhas. And this is the cold water cure weekend with Iceman. This is the link to the Winhoff article if you want to see that. Here in the middle section here, DC area radio station has been told to register as a Russian agent. Which radio station is that? The owner of the owner of a Washington D.C. area radio station that broadcasts Sputnik International 24/7 has been ordered to register his Florida-based broadcasting company as a Russian federal agent. Russian federal agent? I wonder if they really meant foreign agent. Anyway, WTOP-FM reports Judge Robin Rosenberg ruled Tuesday that RM Broadcasting must register with the U.S. government. RM and a Russian government-owned news agency agreed in 2017 that the station would broadcast the agency's communications continuously without edit until 2021. Federal agents told RM in 2018 that the station was acting as a publicity agent for the Russian agency. It said RM would need to register as a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act of 1938, originally adopted to fight Nazi propaganda. RM asked the court to rule on the matter, arguing that it only buys and resells airtime. Okay, well, all right, so that's that. And Musk versus Bezos, military rocket rivalry may reshape national security. And rare event to bring secretive blue origin out of the shadows. And trans goes through grisly castration to become a, yikes, become a nullo. Oof. Okay, well. All right, well, you know, if these people cut off their lineages, I think that's probably the better for the world. So, yeah, okay, they can do that. Facebook becoming digital graveyard and gift to the future. That's right. People die and their pages live on. One thing that I do, when one of my friends dies, I unfriend them. You know, it's my way of letting them go. So just, you guys be warned that as soon as you die, I'm going to unfriend you. So anyway, yeah, digital graveyard. Okay, so anyway, and I think I'm going to close my Facebook before I die. Yeah, I mean, come on. Don't you think that's the way to go? I don't think, I don't want people looking at my Facebook after I'm dead. All right. Yeah, this whole thing, you know, about the executive privilege, Democrats hold Barr in contempt, the Pelosi jail will be overcrowded, all that kind of stuff going on in Washington, which, frankly, I think, you know, that's people inside the Beltway, to them this is very important. All right. Amazon accused of illegally collecting data on children. Uber drivers protest around the world ahead of the IPO. So Uber is going to start issuing stock on the stock market. That's what an IPO is. It stands for initial public offering. And a lot of times the people who created the company may make a lot of money as a result of that. Basically, they're taking money out of their company. And the next article there is poverty wages while Silicon Valley investors get rich. And Singapore passes fake news laws despite fierce criticism. Okay. And then over here, inside sex-crazed final weeks at elite colleges. Wouldn't doubt it. And Laura Loomer in tears after social media ban. My life is ruined, she said. Well, I mean, look how old she is. She's young. Your life is not ruined. That's the thing about life. You can always keep on going. Yeah. Judge orders 3-year-old to undergo chemotherapy. San Francisco investigates doctor over measles vaccination exemptions. And somebody in the Britain had a baby. We don't care about that. And suspense builds over Supreme Court moves on abortion, LGBT cases. What's this about? Let's see what this is about. Supreme Court has yet to announce whether it will take up 2 of this year's most closely watched cases, fueling speculation about the justices' closed-door deliberations. Remember, the Supreme Court only takes up a very small fraction of the cases that come to it, maybe less than 5%, I think. And they can choose which cases to take up and which not to. And justices have repeatedly put off saying whether they will hear arguments in a case challenging an Indiana abortion law enacted by then-Governor Mike Pence, instead choosing to relist the case for their weekly private conference more than a dozen times since early January. They have done the same 8 times since March for a case concerning an Oregon bakery fined for refusing to bake a cake for a lesbian couple. This is different from I think the other one was the Colorado one, right? Court watchers say that while the content of the weekly deliberations is secret, it's very unusual for potential cases to be listed for consideration this many times. They also said it's possible that the sensitivity of the topics of LGBT and abortion rights is causing the justices to be overly cautious in deciding whether to hear oral arguments. The 2 cases are almost a roadmap of the most sensitive hot-button issues, a law professor at the University of Virginia told The Hill. The justices gather at a weekly private conference to discuss issues such as requests from those seeking a Supreme Court review of their case. Only 1 justice is needed to raise a topic for discussion, while 4 justices have to sign on in favor of the Supreme Court hearing arguments in a case. But cases listed as being up for conversation at the private gathering aren't necessarily discussed and can be put off for deliberation at a future date. Okay, so anyway, what are they telling us about the Indiana? Okay, here we go. The Indiana abortion statute, challenged by abortion rights groups, became law during Pence's governorship, adding another layer of political implications that the court often seeks to avoid. The law prohibits abortions based on the race, disability, or gender of the fetus and sets requirements for how fetal remains are disposed of. The law prohibits abortions based on the race, disability, or gender of the fetus. Okay, I didn't see any LGBT thing in there. Okay. Okay, so anyway, people are watching to see what happens there. Scammers clone phone number in elaborate Yelp scream, 700 rockets, 4 dead Israelis. Is the Iron Dome getting worse? The Iron Dome is a famous defense that Israel has, defense device or mechanism that prevents them from the rockets that come into their territory from surrounding Arab countries and areas. The number of unintercepted rockets and Israeli fatalities sparked inquiry about the effectiveness of the Iron Dome. Okay, so yeah, the number of Hamas was quick to declare that it had achieved victory overwhelming Israeli defenses with concentrated barrages of projectiles. So Hamas is trying to overcome the Iron Dome by shooting lots more rockets. They shot last weekend. They shot 700 rockets from Gaza into Israel, and Israel retaliated with the airstrikes on targets within Gaza. All right, let's look at what Alex Jones is talking about. He's been banned lots of places, so it's good for us to go there on his own and on our own there. And I'm looking at talking when I look at this. And Trump outlined New York Times tax story on The Apprentice 15 years ago. So yeah, that was the same story that we had on Breitbart. And Facebook calls me dangerous. This is Paul Joseph Watson. Imagine my shock. No, really. Nadler scowls upon learning President Trump invoked executive privilege over the Mueller report. President Trump has claimed executive privilege over the unredacted Mueller report, saying that no, Congress cannot have this. They can have lightly redacted versions and so forth, but he's claiming executive privilege over the full thing. World government system to designate Christians, conservatives, and nationalists as terrorists. That's certainly the direction that we're going in, yeah. Paris Islamist bus driver refuses to pick up woman because of short skirt. Yeah. And conservatives strike back. Let's see what that's about. And meanwhile, let's see, agency to vaccinate workers before cleaning Brussels no-go transit station. I guess the health concerns in that facility are so great that the people going in to clean it up have to be vaccinated first. Exclusive college students voluntarily pay reparations to black Trump supporter. I think we've proven that leftists can be made to do anything. There have been all sorts of things, like signing all sorts of stupid things. Proof every single Democratic candidate is a danger to the Second Amendment. Well, we know that. So we have in this area right now, we have this Democratic Congressman, Matt Cartwright. Next year, hopefully that we can change him for a Republican. Must see guilty white college students pay reparations to a black man. All right? Okay. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, what's this thing about the conservatives standing up? Tonight's, it's a video. Conservative fighting for freedom and the rule of law. Watch Congressman Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz deliver powerful speeches slamming their Democratic colleagues for holding Attorney General William Barr in contempt for political reasons. Also see Caitlin Bennett illustrate the absurdity of social justice warrior policies by asking white people to take out their wallets to pay a black man reparations. Boy. So anyway, the Justice Department did do this. I'm thinking and talking two different things right now, and I got to be careful about that. But the House of Representatives did hold the Attorney General in contempt, and now the Justice Department is saying no one is going to force us to break the law. So we will see how that goes out. I'm sure it's going to go to court now, and I'm sure that the courts will rule in favor of the Justice Department. We'll see what happens with that. Okay. And oh yes, this is important. The Florida governor has signed that law that was passed by the legislature, allowing armed teachers for classroom defense. All right. So, yeah, Florida they experienced a Parkland close at hand, and this is what they're doing. They're going to allow. They are allowing now teachers to be armed if the school district chooses. The law says that the school district can make a decision on whether or not to do this in their district, but at least the school districts have that opportunity now. The bill is an expansion of the state's Guardian program. It opens the door for any teacher to carry a weapon if his or her school district approves. Teachers wishing to carry a weapon will have to complete at least 144 hours of police-style training, psychiatric evaluation, and drug screening. I'm not sure about this police-style training, what they mean by that. We'll have to see what they mean by that. What exactly is police-style training? Breitbart News, I'm sure will include marksmanship, and that is certainly necessary. But just the fact that a school district will allow this will be a deterrent against crazy people that want to cause harm. And I think we can predict with pretty high confidence that if there is going to be a mass shooting in Florida in the future, it will be in a school district that chooses not to arm its teachers. Yeah? Breitbart News reported that Florida's House and Senate passed the legislation in response to the findings of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission. That's the school where the Parkland shooting occurred. that investigatory commission found armed teachers could have made a difference in the February 14th, 2018 Parkland shooting. Yeah, armed teachers could have made a difference. This is what the commission said. But these reporters have come to us 2 weeks later and say, how dare you have a blessing ceremony with guns just 2 weeks after the Parkland shooting? Yeah, that's what they were saying to us. How do you not cancel that event? No, we were showing the world an actual rational, Mr. Biden, rational, Joe Biden, rational way to deal with school shootings. Yeah. Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri headed the commission and spoke out in favor of arming teachers as the investigation concluded. The Associated Press quoted Gualtieri saying, people need to keep an open mind to it as the reality is that if someone else in that school had a gun, it could have saved kids' lives. That's true. This is what the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission found. The Parkland attacker paused to reload 5 times. 5 times he paused to reload. In other words, 5 times he was very, very vulnerable to anyone who had a gun. Someone could have just run up to him and just popped him. Each pause represented an opportunity in which an armed teacher could have taken the gunman out. Yeah. So that's the tragedy. Many children died because there was no one else there with a gun. So anyway, Florida now has this law on the books, and we hope that it will be effective and that many school districts will choose to allow their teachers to be armed. Sounds to me like the conditions are a little bit strict. Police 144 hours of police-style training. I have to look at what that means, but I hope that districts will at least allow teachers to pursue that opportunity. All right. Okay. Trump administration requires Big Pharma to list drug prices in TV ads. Okay. Twitter accidentally, in quotes, suspends David Horowitz again. Yeah, all these accidents keep happening at Twitter, don't they? They accidentally suspended the account of the Christian movie, the anti-abortion movie, Unplanned, accidentally, and here all these accidents keep happening there. Just a day after Twitter accidentally suspended and then reinstated the account of conservative author and Freedom Center founder David Horowitz, the tech company has made the same mistake again. On the same day, the platform also locked the account of pro-Trump meme maker, this name there. The new suspension was for the same infraction they said yesterday was a mistake. Their mistake and over a confusion about spam, said Horowitz in a comment to Breitbart News, who also blasted Twitter for its incompetence and called the rise of corporate censorship a threat to democracy. And indeed it is. The when leftists say that, these are private companies that can do what they want, but let's see them suspend a leftist account and see what happens then. Racism. No. Okay, here's the Department of Justice story about the. Let's look at the Judiciary Committee thing first. These tit for tat fights that go on in Washington. I think most of us are not interested in it, but anyway, the House Judiciary Committee voted Wednesday to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress for refusing to hand over Special Counsel Robert Mueller's unredacted report and its underlying evidence. The House Judiciary Committee voted Wednesday to hold Barr in contempt, with 24 lawmakers voting in favor and 16 against the motion. Democrats strongly voted for the motion, and Republicans vehemently objected. So then, meanwhile, the Department of Justice fires back, and it says that reacted defiantly to Democrats' vote on the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday to recommend that Attorney General Barr be held in contempt. The justice was defiant, releasing a statement after the contempt vote that insisted the Attorney General could not comply with the House Judiciary Committee's subpoena without violating the law. Chairman Nadler's actions have prematurely terminated the accommodation process and force the president to assert executive privilege to preserve the status quo. No one, including the chairman Nadler and his committee, will force the Department of Justice to break the law. So anyway, the Democrats are doing this for propaganda purposes, all right? Already, although this kind of thing will often happen in an election year, but the sort of the tension or the sort of the excitement, or shall we say, over next year's elections are so high that this is basically an election year already. So these crazy things are going on. And Nadler knows that he's trying to force the Justice Department to break the law. He knows that the courts are going to close him down. Maybe even the House as a whole will close him down and nullify this vote. But he doesn't care, because he just wants to say to his constituency, to his base, yeah, we're doing everything we can to get that report out. So it's being done for propaganda, political purposes. And that's the kind of crazy things that goes on in Washington. They're not doing it out of righteous reasons at all. Okay, not at all. Okay, all right. Let's see, we were looking at Alex Jones, weren't we? See what else is on there. Latest news. Okay, we know about the MAGA rally in Florida last night. And Democrats officially adopt Satanism as their religion. Let's see what he says about that. Okay. The Democratic Party has aligned itself with the values that contradict the traditional American and Christian values that once made America great, and America a moral country. Alex explains how the soul of the Democratic Party has already sold out to evil. Okay, so that's a video that you can watch if you're interested. And the STEM school shooting, remember we had that shooting recently, and the shooter has been identified as a female to male transgender. And local news reports a shooter accomplice experienced gender dysphoria. Okay, this was in Colorado. Okay. All right. See a few other things that I want to cover. Here we go. This is on The Guardian a day or so ago, where the experiment with basic income has failed. Let me bring that up on my other computer here. Can I switch the HDMI now? Okay, all right. Quick switch here. Very quick switch. All right, I think we're ready now. Yes. But the story is still coming up. All right. But that's one story, and then also, remember the story that we had out of New York where the people were protesting the gun rights in New York, because in New York City, people are allowed to sometimes carry their guns if they have a permit, which is difficult to get in the first place. But if you have a permit to carry a gun in New York City, you're only allowed to carry it to a shooting range that is inside city limits. So a person living close to the city limits and wants to a gun range that is on the other side of the city limits could not. And so that case has gone to the Supreme Court, and now the city has changed the rules so as to avoid a Supreme Court fight. And the NRA is protesting that, saying that they're just trying to avoid a situation where the Supreme Court gets a chance to say something about the Second Amendment. Falwell is saying that Jerry Falwell's son, Jerry Falwell Jr., is saying that that the support among evangelicals for President Trump will be even greater next year than it was in the last election. And let's see, yes, okay, what are those things that we had here? The Democrat in Pennsylvania harassing the woman outside the Planned Parenthood facility. A Catholic woman was protesting against abortions outside of an abortion clinic or abortion mill, and he actually videotaped himself doing that, and he got a lot of pushback on that, and so he issued a non-apology, which is very interesting in itself. He said that I will do better for women, but he gave a kind of an apology to women in general, but not to the victim that he was harassing. Anyway, we'll go to this opinion piece in The Guardian, which is a socialist paper. I mean, it's aligned with the Labour Party in Britain, but it is publishing an opinion piece that says universal basic income doesn't work. But then that's true. But then the solution then is wrong. It says let's boost the public realm instead. So in other words, let's make government bigger instead, is what they're saying. But anyway, they're acknowledging that guaranteed income does not work. Can we go to my screen? A study published this week sheds doubt on ambitious claims made for universal basic income, UBI. See, when they give it initials, that means it's really a thing. The scheme that would give everyone regular unconditional cash payments that are enough to live on. Its advocates claim it would help to reduce poverty, narrow inequalities, and tackle the effects of automation on jobs and income. Research conducted for Public Services International, a global trade union federation, reviewed for the first time 16 practical projects that have tested different ways of distributing regular cash payments to individuals across a range of poor, middle income, and rich countries, as well as copious literature on the topic. It could find no evidence to suggest that such a scheme could be sustained for all individuals in any country in the short, medium, or long term, or that this approach could achieve lasting improvements in well-being or equality. The research confirms the importance of generous, non-stigmatizing income support, but everything turns on how much money is paid, under what conditions, and with what consequences for the welfare system as a whole. From Kenya to southern India to Alaska and Finland, cash payment schemes have been claimed to show how UBI works. You may be surprised to learn that Alaska's in there, but Alaska has this fund. They basically have a fund, and the revenue from the oil companies that Alaska receives goes into this fund. And then every year, residents of Alaska, I think you have to have lived there for at least a year in order to get this, but residents of Alaska get money from this fund. And it depends, of course, on how much money is in the fund, but it's usually, I think, $1,000 or something like that. Anyway, people in Alaska do get this money from the state government. And Finland, cash payment schemes have been claimed to show that UBI works. In fact, what's been tested in practice is almost infinitely varied, with cash paid at different levels and intervals, usually well below the poverty line, and mainly to individuals selected because they are severely disadvantaged, with funds provided by charities, corporations, and development agencies more often than by governments. See that? Well, usually this is being done by corporations, charities, and development agencies, not so often by governments. Experiments in India, Kenya have been funded respectively by UNICEF and Give Directly, a U.S. charity supported by Google. They give money to people on very low incomes in selected villages for fixed periods of time. Giving small amounts of cash to people who have next to nothing is bound to make a difference, and indeed these schemes have helped to improve recipients' health in neighborhoods, but nothing is revealed about their longer-term viability or how they could be scaled up to serve whole populations, and there is a democratic deficit. People who get their basic income from charities and aid agencies have no control over how payments are made, to whom, at what level, or what period of time. So anyway, this social paper is acknowledging that universal basic income does not work, but then their solution is, okay, let's expand the government. That's their fallback position. We're out of time. I want to thank everyone for tuning in this morning or later by video, and please use this day to deepen and strengthen your relationship with Christ, because that is where your salvation comes from, not from any organization. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.